Hey everyone, we're live, and I'm about to share the screen on this very important meeting. It hasn't started yet. It's supposed to start at 12 noon. It's 12:02. So it says the host will let you in soon. And here we go. We'll be starting soon. Okay. Please be patient with us while we figure out the logistics. Well, we're in the room, folks. That's a good thing. So we're waiting, as you can see. And let's see here. We will be starting soon, it says. I believe we're starting. No? Let's see here. Live. All right. Share. Okay. Still waiting. It's 3:05. Still waiting. So the way I've set this up, this should start automatically.
Recording in progress.
Hey. James, are you in Ibiza right now?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm at a Starbucks. Sorry. Okay, so everybody, we're just letting a few more people in. I'm gonna go ahead and put the agenda in the chat. Yes, I know the time's a little. Hold on. Today's agenda is pretty straightforward. We're gonna have our featured deep remarks. And then right afterwards, the whole point of this meeting today is to hold community and to hold space. So we actually want to hear from you, hear your thoughts, hear your questions, and really provide a space for community members to come together. It's been a pretty tough couple of weeks. I know COVID is on its way out, but it seems like, the struggle continues and we still need to build space and community together. So with that, I dropped the link. Welcome, everybody. And Councilmember Bartlett, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you, James. As always, wonderful job pulling together and being the logistics expert and everything. And thank everyone for coming. So everyone in the room, I welcome you here. It's good to see you. I wish we were all together. So this will have to suffice. So one thing as a council member, I get one of the best parts is I get invited to speak graduations. And since the Zoom revolution, they've become more national in scope. And this year, I'll be speaking at a total of 6 graduations, the most I've ever spoken at, which is going to be exciting. And I usually tell the kids, some lesson, some vision for them to have hope, for them to tackle either water in the future, or environmental degradation, or economic inclusion, or global peace, right? I speak in these terms and get them excited about the future and empower them and tell them not to laminate themselves. But this time is a little weird now. This time I'm feeling that I'm not sure what to say, because I feel an impending sense of doom, honestly, because there's a sickness that has invaded our country, and it's been here a long time, but now it's manifesting from coast to coast, where young humans are willing to kill each other randomly, without mercy. And it's not okay. And so recently, this hit home in Berkeley. You all know this, I'm sure. Last week, we had a young person at the high school. It looks like the person was assembling bombs and buying weapons and recruiting people to attack fellow students at this time, this graduation time. Graduation is today and tomorrow. So luckily the student was intervened by our officers. Thank you for that. And it didn't happen, but it was this close to happening. And then a week before then or so, a student was shot in an attempted murder across from the high school. And then 2.5 weeks before that, a student appears to have committed suicide in a very public fashion downtown, jumping off the garage downtown. So the can-do spirit typifies California, it typifies Berkeley, and we've got to figure it out, because it's not acceptable. I refuse to raise my daughter in this country in this way. So I want to have us come together. Parents reached out, asked me to do this meeting. So we're here now, and we have experts, we have wonderful experts to come share with us their thoughts, and to arm us, wrong word, to give us tools to spot people in crisis so we can prevent this from happening. And how do we move someone who's at this point back into loving humanity? And I want to thank Carolyn Mock and Veronica Cervantes and Dr. Joharche. Forgive me. Thank you for taking the time to come share with us. We have some Berkeley parents here. We have Laura Babbitt from the school board. We have Terry Taplin on the city council. And we have BPD, our fine officers here to help and share. And the mayor of Berkeley, Jesse Arguin, sends his regards. He's out of town right now at a camp opening. So with that, I'd like to just encourage us to share and to learn and hopefully discover the can-do spirit that lives inside of us to change what's going on. So first off, please, James, who's next? Who's going to talk?
All right, and now we're gonna send it over to Councilmember Terry Taplin to speak. Councilmember Taplin.
Thank you, James. Hello, everyone. Big thanks to Councilmember Bartlett's office Big thanks to Laura Babbitt over at the school board. I want to commend our investigators and detectives at the Berkeley Police Department for intervening. For those of you who don't know, I grew up here in Berkeley, in West Berkeley. I'm a product of Berkeley schools. I went to Berkeley High. These recent events have shook me and my loved ones and our entire community to the core. We are not immune to gun violence here in Berkeley. When I was growing up, it was a big problem down here in West Berkeley, and what we've been facing in recent years and recent weeks is beyond what is acceptable. We have a responsibility to ensure that our public spaces are safe for Berkeley's families, and our public institutions need to be prepared to respond to these kinds of events and to keep our families safe. So I look forward to hearing from these experts and the community as well. Thank you.
All right, and next we're gonna have our school board director, Laura Babbitt.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to show your support that there is a story of we, as our council member Ben Bartlett always says, and now this is a part of our story. And so collectively we can face these challenges together. I'm honored to be here to serve you as the Vice President of the Berkeley School Board, honored to partner with all of you in being that village that our children are screaming to us that they need. So let's get on the wall together and let's make change happen together. Thank you so much.
And now we're gonna have brief remarks from our Berkeley Police Department. Jessica Berry and Byron White.
Hi, everyone. I'm Byron White. I'm the Public Information Officer for the City of Berkeley Police Department. I'm sure everyone's aware of what the arrest we just had recently. It all started for us on the 21st when we received a tip that a student was actively recruiting others to have some type of active shooter incident or other act of violence that also included the possibility of planting bombs. At that point, we started following up on that and verifying the information that we had received, which led to a search warrant the following day. When we had that search warrant, we recovered several pieces of evidence, but I think it's very crucial for people to understand these were pieces of guns or pieces of things that could be made into explosives. It was not the completed package. In the interim, we called for the city's crisis team to speak with the minor, and our youth services unit then followed up with an investigation, which ultimately led to a warrant for the minor's arrest. And this past Monday, he turned himself in.
Thank you all. Thank you, Officer Perry. Would you like to say a few words or just say hello?
Yeah, I can do a little bit of both. Hi guys, I'm Officer Jessica Perry. I'm the area coordinator for Southeast Berkeley. Some of you I've met, some of you I haven't. I'll just kind of second what everyone's been saying on this, and like everyone's saying in the chat, we're not here to make excuses. We understand this side, and we understand that there's no words that we can say to put anyone at ease for what's happened in the previous weeks in regards to the recent incident that Officer White spoke of. And it looks like in the notes there's some people commenting in regards to the recent shooting that was at Civic Center Park, and then the suicide that happened across from at the parking garage. So we're here to listen to you guys and be here as a resource and help you guys talk through this.
And before I introduce our experts, I wanted to just say thank you, all of you, for being here. And now we're gonna thank you. Thank you, Ronnie. I see you clapping. I see all of you. So yes, we're gonna have our first speaker just briefly share their thoughts a little. And then of course, right after our speakers speak, we're gonna do public comments, and we'll use the raise hand function and we'll do it in order. And if you don't feel comfortable making a comment or doing a question, you can always go ahead and message me privately. Me or Councilman Bartlett would love to speak on behalf of you if that makes you more comfortable. So Caroline Mook, please go ahead. We'll have you be the first speaker.
Hi, my name is Caroline Mock, and I'm a PhD in downtown Berkeley. My office is located down the street from the high school. I have a 6-year-old in the school system. I also provide therapy and assessment for children and adults in my private practice. I also published an article in the Threat Assessment and Management Journal regarding threat assessment training in all VA police, with all VA police officers in the country. So I have some experience on a large scale of threat assessment. I also wanted to share a profile of what's commonly seen in the school shooters. I'm going to use a case example from my private practice to exemplify what it might look like. I had a man come into my session. He was a boy, and he came in for depression. That's a common starting point. Not everybody who has depression is going to shoot up schools, but this particular person, and it seems like the research done is that there's depression. Sometimes there's no depression, but sometimes there is. And so we worked together in my private practice for a while, and he started talking about posting pictures of guns on social media, feeling isolated and different from everybody else, and just feeling really bad for himself. He had parents who didn't understand him. He talked to them, but they felt ashamed of him for having a mental health issues. He described feeling humiliated and blamed others, and became very angry and even paranoid, feeling like other people were trying to harm him. He even had fantasies of hurting himself, hurting others, including the family pet, and including his mother. So you hear the familiarity to some of these shootings that you're hearing about. And some it sounds like pertain to the student at Berkeley High. So for treatment, I joined him, and I didn't call the police, and I didn't make him an outcast or throw him out of my private practice. I joined him as a friend and therapist. I got him to the hospital, and he stayed there for numerous days. I removed his weapons, which he was carrying in his backpack. And I got him through the hospitalization program into an intensive outpatient program, into my private practice for 2 days a week, and then family involvement. And now he's connected to resources all around the community, and he has no weapons, and he's back in school, finishing college, and is against guns. So there is hope for these people. So if you need resources, you can contact me. I'm Caroline Mock, PhD, but there's also trauma research centers. The Wright Institute has great therapists to help with students or parents or teachers. Thanks.
All right, thank you. And next we're gonna have Veronica Cervantes.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's Veronica Cervantes. Wefers is such a Latino name. Forgot to put Lopez Cervantes Montoya Garcia Rodriguez Medina. Anyways, I did that intentionally because I also wanted to indicate that even though we're having a very tumultuous times with the gun violence and mass shootings, humor is very important. Along with that, I wanted to share a little bit about myself. Now, I'm not promoting, but I was a teacher for over 20 years in a variety of areas in rural Sacramento, Oakland, San Francisco, and shoreline like Petaluma area. I grew up myself in Southern California. Grew up in an area that has been substantially perpetuated by a lot of gun violence near. Unfortunately, I also myself have experienced mass shootings, so I understand the severity and the impact that it has. So while I was a teacher, I also began to learn about trauma-informed education, and it helped me as a teacher to be able to humanize the students and not just see them as other, and also how to support their mental state, and also the families that don't understand what's happening with their child and why. So now I'm a therapist and I work with people with trauma, young adults, and all ages, of all sorts of communities. And one of the things that I do work with is trauma-informed care, psychoeducation. And I work with the nervous system and try to encapsulate, like, we all grieve in different ways. And when you see someone anxious or depressed, we all have different experiences. And so to identify a student who might be feeling depression or anxiety, it comes in different forms, and it's also embodied differently. Some students may be irritable, tired, more isolated, quiet, or even they use their anxiety in a way to kind of keep pushing through. It's not a one pill fits everyone. So it's really a difficult situation, but I wanted to just kind of share that. I'm open I do better with like smaller groups, so I'm a little nervous. So if you're interested, you can contact me. I live in Marin County, but I just want to say that I'm here for support. And I also want to just preface, it's very commendable for the students who spoke out. I think they were doing it at a place of concern to help the other person, the student who turned himself in. And I know that it's easy to kind of follow through and express ourselves with anger, but that separates us. But it's important to also leave space for that. How to speak from the I statements, and not put the other person separate, because we need to bring the person in closer rather than trying to separate. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. And thank you, Veronica, for stepping out of your comfort zone to speak to a bigger group. Once again, this event is about holding space for one another. I know we put this together within the last 48 hours, and I'm so glad everybody came. It's not necessarily about knowing the right answer and knowing what to say. It's about collectively listening to each other and perhaps finding a solution together. So once again, thank you. And we have our last speaker before we give it back to Council Barlett, our MC, and also we're going to hear from you, the public. So Hannah Georgie, excuse me for butchering all of your names, apologies, and go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I love that. I'm Hannah Leojoharchi. I'm a psychologist, and I'm feeling somber, hearing more and more of the details, seeing your faces. I'm also really grateful that we're coming together, and that's kind of what I'm here for. If folks want to reach out, I can, offer that. And I put together a little PDF yesterday, just kind of coming up with things I would tell, my partner's son. I'd probably pare it down a little bit because it is like a full page of words, and I get that it should be like just bullet points, but if anybody wants that, that's for anybody as well. That's about it.
All right, and now I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember Bartlett. Feel free to start raising your hand if you want to speak. Once again, if you want to speak, we will go down the list of who's in order, and then if you have a questions, comment, we'll try to be as free form as possible, because this is meant to be an open space, and that's why y'all notice this is not in webinar format, and this everybody's allowed to put chat. So obviously we ask everybody to be respectful, but we also ask everybody to understand that you might not have the perfect language, know what to say, but let's hold space for each other, and we want to hear from you. So Councilmember Bartlett.
Thank you, James. Thank you. I know you're in Ibiza right now. It's some Starbucks, it looks like. Thank you for doing it. So, I was at the Berkeley Bowl just yesterday, and the news had gotten out about this attempted act of terrorism, and the mood in there was somber. People were nervous. They're like looking around. It was a completely different vibe. It was a fearful vibe. So, I guess I want to start this off with a question to to our experts, and any one of you can take it. So, my job, right, in the city council and Councilman Taplin, we do things like fund initiatives to help violence and help, mental health, things like that. But, we're not in the ground. I have a child who's 2.5 years old. Councilman Taplin doesn't have a child yet. And, so how can parents, right, who are actually around these people, and teachers and anyone else who's around these young people, how can they spot the signs of someone who's on the brink of committing this act of violence? That's my question. And feel free, any one of you to take it.
I think one of the new, social media is a place where people are posting before they commit these acts. And so parents could talk to their kids about reporting if they see anything on social media. That's the first thing. But if parents talking to their kids just about the dangers of if someone's acting differently, a friend or a classmate that they might be worried about, to maybe talk to a parent or an adult about it, not just ignore it. A lot of times I think the students see it in the classroom, but they don't know what to do with it.
Okay. So a good friend of mine was the Facebook whistleblower, Ms. Frances Hagen. And she decided to come forward after observing that the Facebook engagement algorithm was wrapping people up into bubbles of interaction that was negative, basically, because people responded more to negative interactions. And this negative feedback loop was causing people to become more and more extreme rapidly. And they were saying that if this were to continue, the country would break apart within 20 years. And so I know that one issue is that these kids are bullied online. And I know back in the day, you get bullied, you go home from school, it's over. So you go back. But now it surrounds you 24/7. You come home and they're getting you on Snapchat or whatever, it never stops. So I'm going to put it out there because we've got to do something here. I want to go to questions now. Sarah Bowles, I'm going to ask you to speak now, okay?
Hey, thanks. So far what I'm hearing are a lot of crisis management solutions, and I don't think that we're dealing with the root cause. And in my observation as a parent of a kid at Berkeley High who's been there for 1 year now, the kids aren't okay because of negligence on the part of adults making decisions. Kids walk through an incredibly dangerous park every day filled with drugs and dysfunction and violence, and it puts them on edge. And they go to a school where 80% of the time you can go into the bathroom and see someone vaping, smoking pot, or drinking alcohol. You get offered drugs at an insane rate at school. And everyone wants to stop the school to prison pipeline, but their solution is to ignore problems. They should be lobbying the state to change the ed code so you could have mandated drug counseling as a solution instead of creating a situation that preys on kids who are vulnerable, that just causes them to fall further behind and further lose hope. And that is because of adult negligence. Looking the other way is not the responsibility of adults. So the people in Berkeley, in the city, in the school board actually have to make pro-social decisions for children instead of choosing negligence. Like, it's the other thing that is essentially a problem is that people feel like speechifying about the horrible tragedies of Buffalo or Texas or federal gun legislation is going to move the needle for kids. I sat in on Wednesday's school board meeting, and we had whistleblower teachers show up to say horrifying things like all of our kids would be trapped and shot because of indoor doors being closed. And not one school board director, with the exception of Director Babbitt, flagged that as an issue that needed to be urgently solved in the morning. They all prioritized speechifying instead of hearing, oh God, thousands of kids could be shot. You could do something, please do something. And it's radio silence except for one responsible adult in the room. And that, as a parent, terrifies me because it means the adults are not paying attention and they are not focused on safety at all. And that's a tragic failure that must be owned by the adults who are elected to actually solve problems. Thank you.
Well, thank you. So, by the way, Laura Babbitt is here in the room. I want to thank you for coming, Laura. I know you're taking notes, and if you want to jump in at any time, you can. Same with the experts. If you need to comment on something, I, for one, want to thank you for your comments, and I took note. And we'll follow up. Thank you. Moni Law, please. You are next. Am I doing this right?
Yes, I'm just turning on my camera. Sorry. Thank you, Councilmember Bartlett and community. Hello, Director Babbitt and others. I appreciate the moment. A few things, just ditto to Sarah, everything you just said. I live across the street from the high school. I work around the street from the high school. I saw the young man in the street after he jumped off the city street garage. And since that time, it's hard to start talking about that. Students went into action. His friends asked what could have been done to prevent this. Not an afterthought, but a prevention. So they actually took a petition and got 250 signatures in 2 hours. They met with Councilmember Harrison, whose district this is. She met with them and she shared something very personal that I never knew. And she was very sensitive to the concerns. So they promoted a package for mental health support program, they're calling it. They're creating a student group. They know there aren't enough resources. They testified at the recent Mental Health Commission meeting, and on their panel of 6 students, it was heartbreaking. The mental health distress that they're in on a daily basis, as was discussed, but also some deeper things as well, without resources. So they've done their homework. They did a research project essentially on the fly, and major research was conducted, as well as Wright Institute being connected. They're prepared to apply for the grant that I believe the City Council will be approving, a student-led program that they lobbied for. $350,000 for teacher awareness training and individual therapy. A lot of the students can't access services. They don't have the resources, they don't have the direction, and they need that guidance and support. Secondly, there are some problems happening on the campus that I know about, and there are people in the community trying to help. There are a couple of groups that are very bright students after school trying to come together, Melanin Magic, which is a group of girls, and the Talented 10th, which are some young men. They were hungry for snacks and didn't have food, so Miss Irma Parker, who is an angel and a saint, is coming back after surgery because she wants to help these students. A number of community members with the Racism and Criminal Justice Reform Group and others donated snacks and meals and lunches to bring to these students after classes. So those who are suffering are also striving to succeed, and we can and should support them. So there are a couple things everyone could do is support that item on the City Council, and we're not voting today and we're not having a political conversation, but this is resource conversation. What's needed? They're also on the campus, as Sarah just described, really preventative things that can happen. I've been told that there's a metal detector that's not working. I've been told there's students and their parents sometimes who've brought guns to campus and other weapons that are not intervened with. Well, thank God nothing so bad has happened as of yet, but it can. Things have happened, and some students actually hide weapons near the campus. There's so much information that if you have your ear to the ground, you will hear about it. And if we talk to the students, we will know. And I'm always of the mind, and I'm the chair of the Berkeley Community Safety Coalition. I just want to briefly announce 2 things. One, we're going to have a community summit on this issue where those who are impacted will be those who will be talking. experts are important, really helpful, and we'll have them on a panel. But the students who are impacted are our resource. They could tell us what's needed. And that's what the students have developed in their program. Secondly, there's a Black parent support group that will be relaunching. Irma Parker's coming out of retirement, essentially. She's in her 70s, has been there a couple of decades helping students, and they come to her with their problems. She's not a therapist, she's a support person for families. They're restarting that support group. So she encourages everyone. She can't be there today. Right now, there's actually 2 high school graduations going on. There's a 10 a.m. and a 3 p.m. She's at that supporting the families that she supported all these years, some that are graduating now. So she asked any student or parent in the Black community that is, unfortunately, we're actually also, as many of you know, are being displaced in large number, but those that are here are in need of support, and the families are encouraged to support or to contact her for that support group. And there was one last thing I just wanted to make sure that everyone knows. Uvalde sort of sparked the conversation again, but as we know, all of these conversations have been had before. The social media screening that has been done, we've been asking for that, including for all of the white supremacist groups that should be tracked. So I'm really encouraging the police department to, and we probably have this software where they can track. I just listened to a report last night nationwide that they're doing the tracking on social media to intervene early and to help these kids. As the Dr. Mock, thank you for what you did, by the way. That's the kind of thing I did the other day with a 14-year-old who couldn't stand as he was walking down the street.
Hey, Google.
And I followed the ambulance to the
Mom,
hospital.
I'm in the living room. I'll be
His
right
mother
back.
wouldn't pick him up because he had been released without aftercare. And he's 14 years old as a Berkeley High student. He's on the road to trouble, but somebody has to intervene to help him. So we all can do our part, and I really appreciate all of us who are here to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Moni.
Oh, I forgot to tell you. Sorry, I'm going to send to everybody that's in this group the announcement and the date for the community summit for the Berkeley Community Safety Coalition. And I'm inviting a lot of you as speakers. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Moni. Thank you so much, Moni. And great points about kids helping each other, resources that we can give to support mental health, wellness, all in. And for BPD, if you're listening, that's two speakers now have mentioned, I guess, operational issues to maintain safety. So let's take note of that stuff, and we can circle back on that later. Thank you so much. The next speaker, Kinshasa Taylor. I'm gonna unmute you. Am I doing this right? Kinshasa, can you talk?
Yes.
There we go.
Yes. Hi, how are you? Hi, my name's Kinshasa Taylor. I'm a lifelong resident of the city of Berkeley. Our family owns property in both Ben's district and Terry's district. I have 16-year-old twin daughters. They attend Berkeley High. We transferred from Holy Names High School last year, and this is their first year in the IB program. I would say my children had privilege in this situation that was going on, in the sense that they came from an environment where we were a lot more prepared for situations like this. When my daughters were in kindergarten, that was the same year as Sandy Hook. They attended school in Atlanta, Georgia, and immediately the school increased their communication with parents, which was an issue that I had with this situation in Berkeley. We had training immediately. My daughters, since kindergarten, they're in 10th grade, juniors now, they're aware of what to do in the classroom when this occurs, only because of their direct connection, in the sense of with Sandy Hook going on. It was very terrifying for me to experience the last couple of weeks with my daughters, with the suicide and my attempt to contact the school after my daughters called me to say, hey, Mom, some kid jumped off the building. They said they're saying he fell, he committed suicide. I called Ben and I called James because they're in City Hall and they're right across the street. When I contacted the school, they said, oh, nothing's going on. Everything's fine. So I waited about an hour, spoke to, again, using my privilege of having, friendships with both Ben and James, contacted them like, what's going on? And Ben is like, it's this, it's that. So my communication was outside of the school. And fortunately, I had that relationship with Ben. When there was, I think a couple of days later, there was an issue at UC Berkeley. My children called me again, frantic. I called Ben again, and my kid's logic is, what if this shooter walks down the street? Mom, they told us to go to lunch, and they told them only to stay on Shattuck. Don't go above Shattuck for lunch. And we have this active shooter at UC Berkeley. So again, communication, preparedness, and I think training, were important things that I was able to implement with my daughters that I think most kids could not. My father's been sick for a while. I have a caregiver here. She has 2 daughters. She had no clue about what was going on at Berkeley High until she came to care for my dad the next day. And I found out from Facebook, again, lack of communication from the schools. So I think that the thing that I think would help our children is preparedness and training. I think better communication on behalf of the schools, and also kind of having an understanding. I didn't attend Berkeley schools after 4th grade. At the time, the community was a lot different. The schools were very violent, a lot more violent than they are now. I think my council member may have been a toddler at the time, meaning Terry was a toddler at the time that this occurred. And so the schools were a lot more violent. They had police officers in the school. They had the metal detectors and all of those things. And I'm not sure how much that helped. In my case, I had the ability to choose not to attend Berkeley schools. And now that my daughters are attending Berkeley High, I think educationally it is beneficial for them. However, my concern is the social aspect. There's so many students. The kids hardly know, the kids that are in their class. My daughters in particular are in an IB. So they spend most of their time in a separate building. And so as we're talking about this, do you know who this kid is? Do you know what's going on? What are the teachers saying? Their information is pretty sparse, which makes me more fearful. And after this attempt with this gentleman, I also reached out to our city manager. I knew that she had a son at the school. She sent me great information that came from the police department. So that kind of assuaged my feelings. And if you didn't have that, and other parents didn't have those resources, even Byron and I went to high school together. I went to Holy Names. He attended St. Mary's High School. So having that privilege of contacting folks who may have the direct information and more specific information is something that helped me. My children being prepared on what to do. And also, just as parents, I think there was a mom that just spoke earlier about the children smoking and vaping and stuff in the bathroom. Full disclosure, I have a cannabis company. I have marijuana in my house because I make products. I do social equity work. It's about discernment that parents have to do on their own to teach their children. So I think parents need to also take responsibility in how you raise your children, to interact with others, and also to have discernment about certain things. And I think, that is something for the parents to, and that's pretty much it. I just think that training, preparing folks, and having access to better communication, which I had, that kind of helped assuage some of my feelings. However, I didn't send my daughters to school on Friday because I didn't know if anything would happen, so I think communication is horrible at Berkeley High, and I think communication amongst faculty and administrators and the parents, and I think amongst the students, they don't really talk to one another. So I think figuring out how to get information out there and a pathway for people to also provide information so that we're aware will be helpful, and training the teachers and the students on what to do. And for parents, again, last thing, teach our kids to have discernment. Teachers, it's some of this is our responsibility. It's the responsibility of whoever that young man was for him to have materials for explosives, a credit card to order it off of Amazon, someone old enough or someone in a legal position to provide him with the weapons that you all found. And he's 16, so that's different from Uvalde. That dude turned 18 and bought guns. This kid is 16 and had materials. So that's really crazy.
Oh, Conchasta, thank you. So again, another touch point on operations and preparedness. And I want to thank
May I respond if possible?
Yes, please.
I just want to weigh in and appreciate all of you for, especially the parents, for coming forward and bringing these issues to my attention and the community's attention. And just to let you know that I hear you, Ms. Taylor. Welcome to the Berkeley community. Welcome into our family. And your daughter may be able to get information to you faster than we can as a school district, because we first have to make sure that the parents have all heard this. You know, like we have to have that kind of sensitivity for the parent of the actual victim. And so, and for their families. And so sometimes that may be the reason why you hear about it later, but please do know that our intent is to make sure that as soon as possible, we can make the community as informed as possible. And when I say our intent, as a board director, my main job is to make policies, right? So that is in our policies. And every time that I've found that our policies have been violated, I've provided that information to the parents, to the communities, and said, no, we're supposed to know within 2 hours of this. This communication is supposed to come out within 2 hours. So what communications have to be made? And then we have to also use judgment for sensitivity, because, you are talking about a parent who lost their child's life. You're talking about a family who lost. And as a community, we lost. But in the case of this student who fell off of the building, there's a lot of sensitivities that we still offer in how we even talk about that situation, just out of respect for the family. Now, that aside, there's no excuses for us not having used the resources that we as a board have already put in place to address mental health needs, to beef up our supports for all of our students. And so, again, as we look towards the future, I will definitely be, it was ironic that I had just called out the district a week before this student, the parent, I have to say he fell off the building for the family's sake. So I just called out the school district. We gave you this money for mental health. Our teachers, our staff, our families, our students are saying they need it. Why haven't we put the plan in place? And so as an elected leader, I just had to deal with the fact that, well, I did my part, right? And now what's the next part that we need to do as a community to push harder? I need to follow up more, right? When are we going to get our presentations about what you're doing with these funds? Now, that was just $500,000. That wasn't all of the money that we spent for Berkeley schools K through 12 to address mental health. We gave a lot of money to schools directly. In my opinion, it would have been faster for schools to have autonomy over what their community needs faster than maybe a district program rolling out. So that $500,000 was in addition to what schools were already supposed to be doing. So we definitely, as a community, have a lot of work to do to make sure that not only do we communicate better, but that our proactive plans are in place, that our implementation with milestones, that our measurements, that our accountabilities for ensuring that these things happen once we allocate the resources for them to happen, actually happen. And so again, thank you all for joining us in this, because when you are pushed as parents, then there's additional pressure, right? Part of the reason why I joined the school board is because for 10 years I had been fighting as an advocate for equity and results. And I was like, well, you know what? Maybe if I had somebody on that side pushing harder, and then, we could work together and make this thing happen. And I'm telling you, quite frankly, I need more parents to be expressing these true concerns, these real concerns at school board meetings, because I'm just one vote. And the pressure from the community was what helps me get the 3 votes to push the superintendent and the staff to actually follow through on the needs that we are asking for. So thank you.
Thank you. And Laura, thank you for all you do. You've been a stalwart champion for the people since you got in there. And you have my support. I'll show up. You tell me to. And hopefully some of us in the room will show up. Just let us know when, what you need. We all saw and heard the stories in Uvalde about the government lack of response on the scene. And it was infuriating. We all were really upset. People are calling me all over the country upset about it. And so we have to promise our constituents to be responsive in government, to be responsive, to communicate, and to be there when you need us and not be on the sidelines.
Mom, you okay? I'll be
watching this unfold. So that's what we can do.
Okay.
I'm going to go to Paul. Okay, Paul, unmute yourself, buddy.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you, Ben. I was a little surprised that you called on me. I really appreciate you putting this together as well. And I want to extend my appreciation also to Moni and other city officials. A word that I haven't heard throughout all of this discussion is trust. And we're all operating, all of us are grieving right now. So every response that we're placing on the table is coming out of a grief for our children. I'm a longtime resident of Berkeley at this point. I sent a daughter through the Berkeley public school system from what was formerly LeConte. I guess it's Mendez now, which I appreciate. But I started her there in kindergarten and followed her all the way through high school. And we had a very strong parental group that went along with that class of kids. And I agree with the people who are saying that we as parents need to take more responsibility. But the things that we need to take responsibility for, I think, are listening. We all have to listen to what is going on. We as a community don't even, in spite of all of the things that are happening, I could go from door to door asking people what they know about trauma, and generally, we don't know much about trauma. We as a group need to understand about trauma. I've heard the professionals bring up the word trauma to us. Trauma is ripe in our community. We carry trauma from grade to grade. When my daughter was at Willard Middle School, we ran a program to teach the students there how to put together a magazine, video magazine. During that period, we had at that point, a very serious mass shooting at Columbine. I interviewed all of the students that I was working with. Recently, based on our latest incidents, I've gone back and listened to those. And in reality, we haven't collectively really cooperatively responded to what these children were telling me back at Willard School. So we're now at a point where it has exploded. We now have multiple killings weekly, at least a couple of a month now. And we need to join together in terms of law enforcement. We need to work around the mistrust that we've all built up. We need to work around the mistrust that we have in our leaders. And we can do that by listening to one another. Just as we listen to our kids, we need to listen to the kids. We have a tendency to turn to social media as a cause of some of this. They communicate through social media. They do, but they first communicate with us. Trauma runs person to person. We have families in Berkeley who are living in constant trauma. We need to deal with that. One of the things that I've done, and thank you for the council members who have been kind enough to appoint me to different commissions. I'm pushing hard for community education, not community education on how to duck and cover, but education on how to communicate with one another. We need to listen to each other, and we particularly need to listen to our children. We need to listen to them and be able to hear what they're saying. Simply having a person sit in front of us and talk to us is not good enough. We need to listen to them. The police need to listen. We need to have community relationships that are lasting, that we can build trust in. People don't murder one another in atmospheres of trust. They murder one another in atmospheres of being unheard. We need to listen and we need to trust. Thanks. That's it.
Thank you, Paul. Veronica, I see you. You ready to comment?
Yes, I actually, I appreciate you talking about listening and building trust, Paul. And so with that, I wanted to offer just a moment of listening right now to yourself. If you would like, I'd like to invite you to place your hand on your chest, listen to your heartbeat, listen to your nervous system, knowing that so much rich, in-depth, and personal information is being said right now. And the caring that we have, part of listening starts right here. So if your nervous system is everywhere, we can't listen to anyone, no matter what age. So just take this moment, have your feet on the ground or have your sit bones. This is something you can do with anyone. And I'm gonna offer you to do, we call this in somatic experiencing, it's called Wu. So you hear it in mantras, chanting. Feel free to do this in your mind, softly, and just breathe normally as you exhale. Participate if you'd like, join me, and just start saying, Boo. Boo. Just take a moment. If you need to move around, do that. Sometimes people need to do movement. I bring this in because there's a lot of information that's being passed on right now. And we have to remember, we have to practice what we preach. Take this moment to really settle in, notice that we're all human. And there's so much information that we can actually process. 15 minutes, especially when it's intense, can't process everything. So just wanted to provide that, and I appreciate this. Thank you.
Thank you. That was nice. That was very centering and healing. And thank you. Absolutely. So my list here is not showing. James?
Carol, you are next. Perfect. Carol, we still can't hear you even though you are unmuted. Carol, we still cannot hear you even though you are unmuted. While Carol is still figuring out her audio, you are well, now you're muted, but you are unmuted and it's not working, Carol. I see that nobody else has raised their hand. We still have 30 minutes left. We want to, or more, depending on how long.
From Zinni Abraham, he wants to speak.
Great, perfect.
Okay.
Carol, we'll wait for you, but go ahead, Zinni.
Hi, thank you, James and council member. I'm here to support my friend Councilmember Bartlett and everyone, but I'm also, although I live in Adams Point in Oakland, I'm here in Fayette County, Georgia for my mom as a caregiver. She's 87. And I say all that because she was in the hospital with pneumonia in Las Vegas a couple of weeks ago. And we had as our roommate, or her roommate, a young lady who was 25 years old who was in because she tried to commit suicide for the second time. When I talked with her, I asked why she did this because, you know, she's such a wonderful person, a great artist. And she said that her mother wouldn't listen to her. And we discussed it, and I discussed ways she could, first of all, realize that her mother loves her. And then I had the pleasure of talking with her mother. Communication is lacking. And it's not, you know, the fault of, I think Dr. Mock talked about the school shooter and characteristics, but Dr. Mock takes school shooter out of the description. Those characteristics fit a number of young people today on a scale so great, it's frightening. My girlfriend's niece's best friend, Star Trek athlete at the University of Wisconsin, who committed suicide approximately 2 months ago. It was her second attempt. She's 21. This is going on and on and on. And so we have to get rid of the idea that this is somebody else's problem and accept that we are causing the problem. And I believe, and something I blogged about back in 2006, that we've used texting to replace just talking to people. You used to be able to walk by a person on the street, say, hey, how you doing? You didn't know that person, but you get a nice response as a way of starting your day. We don't do that anymore. The basic ways of just communicating with each other in a loving way, we have cast aside for reading text. And this, I'll be 60 years old this year, so, you know, go with it from that perspective. But I remember a 1994 Wall Street Journal article about how we read email, but we can't help but put our own insecurities on what we read, interpret something a certain way. And that person talked about the dangers of email and warned about how it was going to alter our society. They're absolutely right regarding text. We have to stop texting. And as a person who owns a digital media company, you know, I've lived this evolution. We have to talk to people on the street openly and lovingly, and just simply ask students, hey, how are you doing? What's going on at home? We have to be lovingly nosy in a way that we used to be, you know? For those, some of you didn't grow up, they're much younger. But I'm saying that this overarching layer of what we used to call a second life, and I was actually there when it was established as a company, is quite literally destroying us. And there are people like Sai in Israel that received a contract from the Trump administration in 2016 to do the kind of social media manipulation. This goes on thousands of times, many thousands of times a day around the world by different companies that are hired to do this. But it's not just their fault. They do it because they know we read it, we use these devices, and they can manipulate us through them. So we have to get back to being humans again and expressing love and care, particularly for our kids and our loved ones, the people we don't know. People we don't know. And we have to be allowed to say that to a person. How are you doing? I love you very much. It's great to see you. Thank you.
Well, that's great. Thank you, Zinni. And you're right. We need to refute this anti-human division that is embedded in our country now. We have to refute that, come back together. And honestly, who in the panel here can tell parents, how do you get control of what your kids are doing? No kid should be able to buy guns and buy weapons while living under your roof. So what's the technique to monitor their spending and what they're doing? Because that's brass tacks. We gotta love each other. We gotta fund mental health, but ultimately we have to respond in our own homes to our kids. And so who can tell us right now? Because I need to know. What can parents do to prevent their kids from buying weapons? Who can tell me this? Is it BPD? I can't tell. James, who is the talk right now?
Well, I think this is just taking a step back. I think this question is a little loaded because I think if we knew the end.
I'm looking for real tactics right now. No, for real. What is it? Because obviously these kids are able to buy guns. So is it with a credit card? Someone tell us what to do. Can anyone answer this question?
Well, I'll just offer a few comments. Not a parent myself, but just speaking from past 20 years in law enforcement, I would say, or echo some of the comments that have been made before. I mean, you have to have the best understanding that you can of what your child is up to. That means knowing who they spend time with, because a lot of times who they spend time with inform what they're getting into. That means paying attention to their online activity as best that you can anyway. I imagine if I was a father that I would be very suspicious about like large packages coming in, through Amazon. Like, I don't want to know what's inside that package. At the end of the day, I understand respecting boundaries and things like that, but I need to know because this is my place. But I mean, that's sort of, there isn't a perfect answer to it. And that's one of the reasons why we've landed ourselves in this situation. And I think about a lot of these different events that have been happening across our country. I feel like this common denominator, as everybody's kind of talked about, is just mental health. That's a common denominator with all of them. I think it's something that society is going to have to work on, both mental health and gun control. It's something that's got to be done, and it feels like right now there's a lot of finger pointing, just in the nation overall. But we need to start finding some concrete.
What about monitoring spending? Like, do these kids have their own credit cards that they're spending on? So I need like real brass tactics for parents. And those are great tips too about monitoring packages. What about the spending? Kinshasa, you know this?
You're on mute.
Okay. Hi. So let me say this. My daughters are not perfect, but they're pretty cool kids. They have access to money. They have my card. They have access to my dad's card, which gives them a lot more flexibility than myself. I think one thing that I've seen with most kids and with other parents is teaching your kids the value of consequence, understanding consequence. These kids they're on games, right? So on the game, you have a new life where you can go online, you can buy some more lives. Just the mentality of kids today, there's not really a lot of consequence. A lot of our kids are home alone at times. I was a latchkey kid, but I also grew up when kids were on milk cartons. So I went to the refrigerator every day and saw a kid who did not follow and understand consequence of actions that they took. So I knew if I didn't come home after school, I didn't look through the peephole, I didn't answer the door for anyone, I wouldn't end up being that kid on the milk carton. And I think that with a lot of kids today, they have this video game mentality. There's more lives. I can get these boosts. There's no consequence. And I think as parents, that's what you can do. And of course, monitor. One of my twins has me blocked on the internet. The other one, she comments every day on my page. So I can communicate. I have a privilege in the sense that I have two girls working together. And so they can kind of help reinforce with one another. That may not be the case with everyone else, but I would say definitely teaching your kids consequence and understanding the ramifications of decisions that they're making. And that goes back to what I said earlier about having discernment. My daughters are juniors. All I'm thinking about now is, will you go off to college and cross the street and text message, and then I find out that you got hit by a car over something stupid like that? So that's what I'm saying. But we need to talk to our kids more about reality and consequence for sure. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you. And thank you, Officer White, too. And I saw someone commented in the chat here, put an alert at $30 of spending on whatever card you give the kid. So things like that. So I'm going to go to Carol, please. Oh, you're on the phone? Okay. All right, this is getting pretty complicated.
You're unmuted, Carol.
Thank you for accommodating my tech.
Carol, mute your computer.
Okay.
Unmuted.
Actually, it is unmuted on the computer. So, thank you. So I'm going to talk, and First of all, I really appreciate that this town hall was called together by Councilmember Bartlett, because what it shows here is a community partnership, that we need to work together as a community to address these issues. Next, I am curious of the police department, how long this was in the planning, and were there other students who did not follow or did not take the initiative that this very courageous student took to report it? And third, without breaching any confidentiality, if this particular individual showed certain signs that teachers should have recognized, that parents should have recognized, that other students should have recognized, what we should have been aware of. As Laura Babbitt has stated, it isn't all about money. It really isn't. There has been money allocated in the past. I sit on the MHSA advisory, and I recall when monies were allocated expressly towards teaching teachers how to recognize trauma within students and how to respond to trauma. So the monies have already been allocated. So what is going on? What is happening? I mean, we get these reports back where on MHSA monies to show the successes, and these reports come from the usual consultant to RDA. And so all we hear about is that these programs are successful. What sort of evaluation is going on of these programs when they are implemented? Who is overseeing the teachers and the counselors? Is it just a matter of that there is not enough counselors out there? And why are teachers not recognizing these signs? And what oversight should there be over the teachers? This is so important, obviously, and it only comes to light when there are these tragedies or possible tragedies in the making. There's so many, we need specifics, and teachers need to be evaluated and overseen in terms of being recognizing what's going on with the students, recognizing the students who are suffering, who feel so incredibly alienated that it comes to this point. Thank you.
Thank you. And your comments are really well spoken, and many points there. Unless Laura Babbitt wants to comment on it, I think we can put a pin on that and work on that in time, okay? Because I want to get to everyone because we're running out of time. Ronnie Cochran, please unmute thyself.
Thank you. I tutored at Berkeley High for a while. My youngest grandchild just graduated from University of Chicago, but this has been valuable to me in more ways than I can express. I am a member of a synagogue in Ben Bartlett's district, and he knows well that the community is frightened. And you have given me, as a member of the synagogue security task force, many, many avenues for moving forward constructively. Thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you. Sylvia Bunge has a comment. You want to mute yourself? You want to ask a question for BPD? No? Oh, you can't unmute yourself. James, can you help here?
Yes, I can. I'll do that right now.
James is in Ibiza right now. Forgive the background.
Yeah. Oh, here it is. Okay. Give me one moment. Apologies. I can't seem to find her in chat right now. Oh, here it is. Found it. Okay. Awesome, Sylvia. Go ahead.
Sorry to hold you all up. I actually don't have a concrete question.
I just want to hear more about what the plans are for the student in custody, whether there are any concerns that any other students might have been recruited to the cause, whether there's anything more that could be done, to keep families, the community informed in the case of these situations. Thank you.
Yeah, just speaking for the department, cases involving minors are a bit different than with adults. It's a lot easier to track with an adult arrest. There are some privacy issues with cases that involve minors. So I don't have the answer to that question, literally. Last check, the minor was still in custody at juvenile hall. But that's something that if the district attorney's office wishes to share that process, that's up to them. That's not something that we have control or necessarily knowledge of, because the juvenile justice system is set up differently than adult system. It's also set up for rehabilitation.
Thank you. Yeah, it's true. When there are minors involved, there's a lot of privacy. So that's the truth. And thank you. We're working around it. So next,
council member, apologies. I would really ask that we have our speakers all speak and keep it under 2 minutes, because I do want us to talk about like newsletters and all that, and also allow our guest speakers to do any closing thoughts, if that's okay.
Okay, yeah, so we're near the end, everybody. So we want to get everyone in while we can. So let's try to be quick. But this is important. So I'm not going to cut anyone off. I'll stay here as long as you want to stay here. This is important. We have to refuse to accept this anti-human activity as the new normal. I don't care if it's happening every day around the country. It's got to stop happening here in Berkeley. We must refuse to accept it. So I'll be here as long as you want to stay here. I'll hear from all of you, because I'm committed to stopping this. So, Pastor, please.
Hi, I'm Pastor Dwayne Phillips here in Berkeley of Agape Christian Fellowship Church. And I just want to say that the faith community here in Berkeley, especially the BEMA pastors, are willing to help. We want to start some programs. We have some programs already started to help our young people in Berkeley, no matter their skin color. And I think that one thing that got me is, very quickly, as a kid growing up in Berkeley, I had my father in my house, and there was no compromises. He told me to do something, and I did it. And my parents always checked on me as a kid growing up. I think now some parents are trying to compromise with their children by providing them something to behave better. If you are the parent, be the parent. Now, every parent is different, and it's tough, but they want you to be honest with them. They want you to be able to show trust in your kids and be honest with them and stay on top of their lives. But I think as a faith leader, we have a responsibility to reach out as well. And I think at BEMA especially, we're willing to do that.
Right on.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right on.
Thank you, and thank you so much, Councilmember Bartlett. I do have to attend the next graduation so that we can celebrate those who have done the hard work to accomplish and to become the part of the class of 2022. And we know that as a community, we've done many things to help support. And so I don't want to make us feel like we're failing everyone, right? Because let's take the fact that we have our challenges. This is not excuses, but as I'm thinking about going to graduation, there are a lot of students who are going to be change makers in this world because of the work that we have done collectively as a community to support them through their K-12 experience. But going forward, there's so much more that we can do. I ran on the platform Leadership for Changing Times. And what I'm finding is how hard it is for our school districts to change with the times. And looking at all of the suggestions that people have made, and, you know, again, we're still thinking about credit cards, and somebody's like, we're using PayPal and Venmo, right? So coming up with these real strategic, actionable plans is something that I am so looking forward to. And it really does take all of us together to be that counter narrative, to remind us that it's about PayPal and Venmo, right? And that we are in these changing times, and how can we use Zoom more, and all of these technologies that we have to get the word out. I've been saying since I first started as a parent advocate, and somebody asked me to go to a PTA meeting. I was like, yeah, this was over 15 years ago. And I'm like, what's the call-in number? I'm thinking we're going to do this in a conference call. And they're like, no, you got to be here at 4:30 on a Tuesday. If I don't have a job to be at 4:30 on a Tuesday, right? So it's just really, how do we go to the next level? How do we move forward? I loved Amy's comments around what are the actual items that we can do and put in place now, and how can we move this needle? Because this system is very resistant to change. But collectively, if there's enough force on the wheel, it has to move. And so how do we get that force collectively so that it moves? Because our kids are ready. And the last thing I want to say is, the one word that I really haven't heard today is love. And love is what is going to counter narrative so many of these mental health issues. It's going to help bring somebody out of depression. It's going to help bring somebody into light for us when we're not even looking at them, and we're not even seeing the signs, because we're so focused on what we have to do next. We haven't taken the time to love past words, to love past great speeches. To love into action is what our children see. And that's the only thing that this generation is actually going to respond to. You can tell them, I'm here for you all day long. But if they haven't seen you show up just to sit and do absolutely nothing, they do not believe you. And so that's the kind of movement that we have to make. How are we actually present? I loved when Ms. Mock said, I joined the child. I didn't make it this issue for somebody else. I joined this person in their road to recovery. So how do we join as partners? There's so many things happening. I'm gonna be honest with you. Nobody needs to start anything new, because then once you start something new, there's so much work that this other organization is doing over here. And then there's not enough hands to go around. But many hands collectively working together does make light work. So how can we partner in what is already there, pivot and change and grow with the times now, and not be lazy about it? I don't want to use the word lazy, but not be slowful about it. Like, not say, make it a real priority in our lives. Put it over that Netflix thing that we're binging. Put it over all of the times when we say, I'm just so tired and I need to rest. Well, get up, because we got to work. We have to work, and be tired, but faint not, right? Get your sleep and get back up the next day, because we need you, and we can do this together. So thank you all so much for hearing from my heart and for allowing me to leave early. Oh, I can be reached at Laura Babbitt at Berkeley.net. Just remember, it's 1 B and 2 T's. And you can reach the whole Board of Ed at boardofed@berkeley.net. And we so appreciate you, Councilmember Bartlett, Councilmember Taplin, and all of the experts, and all of you for coming out to show your support. It gives me hope. It gives me courage that I'm not here alone, and we can do this for our babies. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And you are not alone. No one here is alone. Okay. So we're almost out of time, so I'm going to stay, but I want to have our guests who showed up to share with us, PPD and the psychologists, because your time is so valuable. I appreciate you. So quickly run through it and give us some final comments from your point of view, and then we'll get the more speakers. If you can stay if you want, if you need to, but I want to honor your time and just ask you to please just share with us your final thoughts based on what you've heard, because we're hurting. we're confused, and we're engaging this. And so we want your help.
Mind if I go first?
Please.
Okay. I'm just thinking about, this. I see students from Berkeley High. I see students from all around, but it's a hard time for students, especially around coronavirus. They've been isolated from their friends. They don't have their usual coping strategies. They're home. They're feeling like things are scary and things are unsafe. So people are dysregulated, right? So I think what Veronica was doing before with the somatic therapy was getting people to be more mindful and to be present and to regulate themselves. And so if parents and teachers can both regulate themselves, it could really help with mental health issues and being present for each other and having those difficult conversations. So I know in prisons, they will do mindfulness training, yoga, meditation. And so they get people in a room together and have group sessions. And I think Berkeley High may already do stuff like that, but if you can break the huge population of Berkeley High into smaller groups and have one person kind of be responsible for that group, like an advisor, it could help with the person being seen or heard. I know when I was running a psychology program, I would meet with each person individually for 10 minutes. And from there, I could see who was having trouble getting to classes. And there were veterans that couldn't get from their car to the classroom. And I could see that in the 10 minutes. So doing something like that could help with, you're working with what you already have. The other thing that I do in my private practice and the hospitals do is they have people sign no gun policies, right? Like if you have a mental health condition and you've been hospitalized, you're not allowed to ever purchase a gun again. So I don't know if you want to take it so far, but it's something like that where you have a safety contract with people. Some people might take it seriously. My client takes that very seriously. She'll never try to buy a gun. But other people might be like, well, who cares? But there's safety contracts for guns. There's safety contracts where I won't commit suicide. So those are extreme, but just something to consider.
That's great. Thank you. Please.
Sure. So thank you so much for just inviting therapists and psychologists in the first place. That's new to me. I haven't seen that a lot. I know it shouldn't be like, thank you for involving mental health, but I do. I really appreciate you all for that. And I hear that it was all done in 48 hours. So that's amazing. A couple of the things I put in the little PDF that we put in there was just, first of all, there's no easy solution. I think anytime there's this pervasive, horrible tragedy, I could think of a few really big tragedies. We kind of, I think, want something to kind of solve it. We want some kind of thing, right? Here, do this and this will feel better. What I talked about in the PDF was acknowledging big feelings and reflecting that like a mirror, right? So some people talked about that open channel and not just being there with young folks to ask what's wrong or to kind of police and manage, but also to say like, where's their heart? And so I put that in there with an example. I also talked about honoring big feelings and then moving into parasympathetic nervous system activities, which if you want to know more about, it's in that little breakdown. But essentially it's an emotion cycle is about 90 seconds. And so often we'll like look at, a TV show, or folks will drink, or people will do something to get out of that 90-second emotion cycle. But if you feel it fully in that moment and then move to something that can kind of de-escalate your nervous system, parachute you down, it actually can be effective. So I talked a little bit about that. I talked about reconnecting with the greater good and whatever that looks like for that person or that community or family. Talked about checking in with people and acute trauma symptoms. in the PDF, and then some limits. There's an episode on there with Dr. Latrice Doughton and myself about how to handle social media when the world seems scary, specifically these things. So that's all in there. I'm sending everybody love. This is super weird and super hard. I don't think we came out this way to harm one another. So it's weird. So just let me know if you feel like I could be helpful. I'll put my email in the chat. Thanks.
So thank you for allowing me to be part of this this group, and I do appreciate Dr. Mock, how you ordered everything that I was trying to encapsulate without explaining too much. And yes, regulating your nervous system is very important. Meeting the students where they're at, talking to them, not at them. Restorative justice is very important. I think that's one way we can actually reach people and open conversations with love and empathy and compassion. There are some websites that I can put into the chat room to find somatic therapists or any other form of therapist that can reach students. There's traumahealing.org. There's Hannah Somatic, that's more body work, Hannah Somatic education. There's also other platforms that reach, it's Bay Area Open Minds, the therapists that have a vast community, a vast amount of resources and therapists for the LGBTQIA community and BIPOC. I really want to share that, you know, even though I'm not in East Bay, my heart still is there because I worked in that area for many years. I'm not too far in Marin, so you know, I would like to just leave with, you know, checking in, grounding in, taking a moment to breathe, checking your nervous system. Just notice what's happening. You know, if you want to learn about polyvagal theory, your parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system, do all that. It's all on Google. That's the beauty of it, but it's also the double-edged sword. So feel free to reach out, Google my name. I'm there somewhere, and I'll leave it on my chat. But thank you very much. Take care.
I'll jump in too. I'll be sticking around, but I wanted to thank all the experts and the community members. Councilmember Barlett and I will take what we've heard here today, and we'll work with Director Babbitt to move a lot of this forward. I did want to say that we heard a bit about the signs to look out for, people feeling isolated, people being alienated. And one thing that I benefited from through my time as an adolescent was strong mentorship, both in the community and through the school district. Having a mentor is so important to break these feelings of being abandoned and being thrown away. If we can help our young people form positive relationships with their community, with their environment, that goes such a long way. And that's something that the city of Berkeley and the school district can work together with the community around, also around restorative justice, which I also strongly believe in as well. On the city side, last year we passed an ordinance against the possession of ghost guns. That has recently gone into effect. And in my office is requesting around $1 million in the upcoming budget to launch a ceasefire gun violence intervention program. And that's something we hope to see moving forward as well. I'll drop my email in the chat and I can give folks info about all those things. That being said, I'll be, also there was a question, an operational question around BPD's trainings for live shooter scenarios. I'm not sure if anyone would be able to respond to that, but I did want to flag that.
Hi, Byron White here from the police department. I was kind of responding to some of the questions in the chat, but in answer to your question about the trainings, we do conduct regular firearms trainings, but scenario-based training, it's a tremendous undertaking. And the simple answer is that the more staff you have, the easier it is to do training. But in closing, I really just wanted to underscore the importance for people to talk with their son or daughter about what it means to be safe. If you see some type of act of violence, to leave the area immediately, find somewhere you feel safe, you can lock yourself in, and then call for help. The other thing is, if you see something, say something. Just cannot overstate that because those people who came forward provided us information that we may not have otherwise found out.
Well, thank you. Well, very sobering information, but that's what we need to hear. Thank you so much, officer. Thank you. Well, so to all of our esteemed guests, the notable psychologist, BPD, Laura Babbitt, Councilmember Taplin. I think you're going to stick around, Councilmember Taplin. Thank you for making the time. I know it's a lot today, but thank you. We appreciate this, and we'll take your information and we'll do something with it. Thank you. And so I'm going to hang around, and I know there are people still in the chat area. But question, I can't see it anymore though. James, can you help me out here, buddy?
Yeah, so we have 2 more speakers. If you want to speak, please raise your hand. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and close stack. But we have Norma and then Raichi. Yes, Raichi. Thank you. All right, Norma. Go ahead.
Well, I know that you're frustrated because we haven't said anything in particular that's on the ground level for looking at the situation and then trying to work things out from there. People don't like to be categorized as being a 3-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 20 or 30 or all of these categories, as you've noticed, put us into position to go get a job. And the job is usually unsatisfactory from many standpoints. I mean, even when you have a prestigious job that you really like doing and gets respect in the community, it's too many hours. It's got some boss in it that isn't comfortable. There are all kinds of reasons. And when you do have a good job, it's still not enough in the world to have a good job. So what we're trying to do is reverse that. And one of the ways is to see how we can have our children, and these are not kids, they're people at a childhood level, which is a protection to know that you're a child and not a kid, hooray, happy-go-lucky, devil-may-care. They're just people. And they have the anguish and the joy the same as the rest of us, and it needs to be recognized. But if we tried to create an arrangement where our children were working with us, had the same jobs with us or some jobs with us, and that they knew that they were going to come in to the factory and sweep the floor when they're 3 years old for 15 minutes, and everybody's going to say, "Hi, Johnny, good to see you, good job." Whatever the situation is that you can imagine in your mind of changing the relationship of what children are supposed to do, and not only their relationship, but the adults' relationship, as a mix of people being together, doing what needs to be done in the community. You have a whole different operation going on from what goes on now. And one of the big things is that you need to tax the heck out of the people that make the fortunes off of our working for them like robots. And once changing the relationship of having our owners be in charge, I mean, our owners who buy our legislators and make the laws that prevent us from carrying out pleasant work for ourselves and for the community. One of the things I have suggested as perhaps a model is small farms where people do labor-intensive work, and it's
Norma, I'm so sorry. People are dropping off, and I really want to give Rachie a moment to speak. We'll just go ahead and wrap up, please. Thank you.
I didn't finish.
Yes, go ahead. We want you to finish, but I just want you to let you know we want to make sure Rachie get a moment to speak before everybody hops on.
Well, I'll give her all the time you figure out to give her. You know, the model I was going to suggest is that we have the small farms, labor intensive, integrated, whatever kind, livestock, plants and vegetables and fruits and so forth, people working together in actually very large plots, but nothing like the monoculture, what do they call that, farming that ruins the earth. Anyway, and we have their shops. Remember, does anybody remember a lot of shops in the area that you could walk to? A health clinic on every corner, kinds of things. An opera house in the middle of the field, so that you have a full complement of lively living in areas which appear to be agricultural, but are not, that they're mixed with all the, and the children just participate because that's what people do together. We don't have that kind of dream that
Norma,
brings...
those are great points.
Okay.
They really are. And
enjoy. I'll talk to you later.
The essence is clear. We need to rehumanize our families and our children and ourselves, work the land, work together, give them responsibility, make them grow up. Essentially, yeah. Yeah, that's me talking.
All right, Rachie. Rachie, we'll go ahead and give you the last word. Go ahead and close this out. Thank you for waiting as our last speaker. Oh, I have to unmute. Okay, got it. Hopefully it worked.
Okay, thank you so much. I was trying to mute. Thank you so much for having this discussion. I really appreciate it. I just want to quickly follow up on a couple of items that Councilmember Taplin just talked about. You know, there are some specific things I think we can do that might not be a huge lift because there are some models out there already. So, for example, you know, if we do have a, you know, kind of a general quote unquote profile of who we think you know, characteristics, you know, experiences and characteristics of these young shooters, for example, you know, troubled home life, bullied or outcasted, you know, under age 18, try to seek a weapon at the eve of their 18th birthday, you know, sometime before they turn 18. You know, what it tells me is that, you know, we do have a targeted age range. You know, we know that these are, you know, also boys, right? Primarily boys. And so, you know, what I'm thinking about is perhaps, you know, from freshman to senior year, really robust mentorship program that, you know, have actually young men coach other young men. And there's a couple of models out there. We've all probably have heard of Coaching Boys into Men, also Obama's My Brother's Keeper. And there's a lot of models out there that I think we can take a look at, and it would be a really wonderful collaboration between the school district and the community as well as the city, because many of these mentors can also come from other areas in the community, like from our churches, et cetera. And so it could be a way to really, you know, draw everybody in to support our young men. And then my final comment is really up, and this is what the police officer who just spoke also said, is that really uplifting and celebrating the youth who spoke up to prevent this tragedy from happening. You know, we know that some of them did. Obviously, we might not know who they are, but I think that, you know, especially at the start of the new school year, if the teachers and the community, you know, really talk about this in the classroom and say, hey, you know, this bad thing almost happened, but really what prevented this from happening was all of you, people just like you, students looking out for each other and really speaking up, really prevented this huge tragedy from happening. So it's really important that we do that for each other. That is something really simple that can have a gigantic impact, but kids need to know that that's cool. It's cool to speak up. And also for us to help identify for them who within the schools can be a safe and trusted adult to speak up to, right? So we should be telling kids at the elementary, middle school, as well as high school level, these are the safe adults, right? Who are going to keep your feedback, you know, confidential and help you work through, you know, kind of some of these things. But these are people that you can trust to go to your concerns with. I think that's hugely important. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So I think you're the last speaker. Anyone else want to make a comment? Anyone? Well, I want to say thank you all for showing up today. And in this time of graduations, I think we ourselves have to graduate to a new level of understanding, preparedness, and action. So we learned a lot today, and we have a lot more to learn. Obviously, 90 minutes is not going to do it, but we can now prepare to step forward with a plan to make a plan. We've got some action steps. We're going to capture everything we said today. We're going to send it out to everyone. And please follow up in your communities, in your families, in your neighborhoods, in your school districts. And we will too. Let's keep working on this and really get to the point where this is not a community that will be susceptible to mass killing. Thank you so much. Love you all. You're all family to me. So when you suffer, I feel it. We're in this together. Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye, y'all. Carlin, you have to end the meeting.
Should I go ahead and end it?
You have to end the meeting, yes.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Hey everybody, that ends this broadcast, and subscribe to Zenny62 and bookmark oaklandnewsnow.com.